Welcome to another reading for the presidents. We're going to do all the 40s of this book. So 40, 40, 41, 42, and 43. Oh, and 44. Obama. So we're going to do 4 in one video. Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, born February 6, 1911, in Tampico, Illinois. He died June 5th, 2004, in Simi Valley, California. He was nicknamed Dutch, the Gipper, Ronnie, and the Great Communicator. He was a member of the Disciples of Christ Church. He attended Eureka College in 1932. He was an actor. His military service was second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Reserve. After December 7, 1941, this Pearl Harbor Day, called up for active service, served in the U.S. Army April of 42 to July 45, so 3 years and 3 months, and was promoted to captain. His father was John or Jack Edward Reagan. His mother was Nell Wilson Reagan. First wife was Jane Wyman, actress. Second wife was Nancy Davis Reagan. Children include Maureen Elizabeth, who passed away in 2001, Michael, and Christine, with his first wife. Second wife, Patricia Ann Patty Davis, and Ronald Prescott. He was governor of California from 1967 to 75. He served 2 terms, January 20th, 1981 to January 20th, 1989. He was a Republican. He finished his term. He finished both terms. His vice president was George Herbert Walker Bush, or Bush #1, Bush Sr. In the election of 1980, Mr. Reagan got 489 votes, electoral votes. Jimmy Carter only got 49. In the popular vote, Reagan got 43,899,248. Mr. Carter got 35,481,435. In 1984, Mr. Reagan got 525 electoral votes. Mr. Walter Mandel, 13. Mr. Reagan won the highest number of electoral votes of any president in history. In the popular vote, Mr. Reagan got 54,281,858. Walter Mondale got 37 million, quite a gap. 37,457,250. Mr. Reagan's cabinet included Alexander H. Haig Jr. and George P. Shultz, who both served as Secretary of State. Secretary of the Treasury, Donald T. Reagan, with just one E or one A, followed by James A. Baker, followed by Nicholas F. Brady. Secretary of Defense, Caspar W. Weinberger, followed by Frank C. Carlucci. Attorney General was William French Smith, followed by Edwin Meese, followed by Richard Thornburg. Secretary of the Interior, James G. Watt, followed by William P. Clark, followed by Donald P. Hodel, Hodel. Secretary of Agriculture, John R. Block, followed by Richard E. Lying, Lying. That's his last name, Lying. Secretary of Commerce, Malcolm Baldrige, followed by William Verity Jr. Secretary of Labor, Raymond J. Donovan, followed by William E. Brock, followed by Ann Dore McLaughlin. Excuse me. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Richard S. Stryker, followed by Margaret H. Heckler, followed by Otis Bowen. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Secretary of HUD was Samuel R. Pierce Jr. Secretary of Transportation, Andrew Lewis, followed by Elizabeth H. Dole. She related to uh, the other Dole. Yeah, could be. After Elizabeth Dole was James H. Burnley, and that's all for Secretary of Transportation. Secretary of Energy, James B. Edwards, followed by Donald P. Hodel, followed by John S. Harrington. Secretary of Education, Terrell H. Bell, followed by William J. Bennett, followed by Laurel F. Cavazos. Book and movie credits. While most presidents can boast a book or two, and Ronald Reagan wrote two, Where's the Rest of Me, the Ronald Reagan story, in 1965, and An American Life, the autobiography, no other president can claim movie credits. During his acting career, Reagan made 53 movies, including Love is in the Air, Hell's Kitchen, Newt Rockne, All American, King's Row, This is the Army, Nine Unto Night, Bedtime for Bonzo, Hellcats of the Navy, co-starring Nancy Davis, The Killers, his final film. He was also one of the first actors to transition to the new medium of television. There he hosted GE Theater for close to 8 years, and Death Valley Days for 2 years, before he decided to enter politics and run for governor. Supreme Court appointments. Sandra Day O'Connor. We remember her. She's still alive, I believe. William H. Rehnquist as Chief Justice. Antonin Scalia, replaced by Neil Gorsuch later. And then Anthony M. Kennedy, who I think is still on. Yeah, he's Anthony Kennedy. I think he's still on. No. I think he's still on there. Anthony Kennedy. Let's see. Yeah. Anyhow, I think Kavanaugh replaced Kennedy. I think so. Anyway, so Kennedy, Scalia, William Rehnquist, and Sandra Day O'Connor. The U.S. population in 1981 was 226,552,199. 226,542,200. National debt in 1989, 2 trillion, went up to 2 trillion during Reagan's time. 2,857,400. No, 2,857,000,000,000 with a B, 430,960,187. Jelly beans. When Reagan quit smoking in the 60s, he substituted jelly beans for his nicotine cravings, and always had a candy dish sitting on his desk. He offered them to visitors during his governorship in California, and continued the practice as president. For his first inauguration, 40 million jelly beans were consumed by party goers. During his 2 terms, the sales of jelly beans climbed. Interesting. Reagan was the first president to have been divorced. Reagan was the first president who also had been president of a labor union. That was SAG, Screen Actors Guild. Great Communicator. The Great Communicator was the name given to Reagan, who, because of his previous radio broadcasting and acting background, understood how to utilize television to effectively deliver his message to the audience at home. These radio and television addresses were used by the president to explain his plans and hopes for the country. Once he gained the people's support, Congress could only fall in line as well. Mr. Reagan and his second wife, Nancy Davis, appeared opposite each other in the 1957 movie Hellcat Navy. Mentioned that earlier. Teflon President. Democratic Congresswoman Patricia Schroeder of Colorado coined the term, and many reporters and columnists employed Teflon to describe Reagan, who had made numerous verbal gaffes and blunders but never seemed to be harmed by it. His Teflon image was bolstered by the fact that although the budget deficit was skyrocketing and for a time relations with the Soviets worsening, few blamed the president. I thought the Teflon Don, that was John Gotti. When he was president, Mr. Reagan bought a hearing aid, and soon sales for those also rose. So you got jelly beans, right? Sales, right, raising, and then hearing aids sales raising. Reagan was the only president to have been wounded during an assassination attempt and survived. Reaganomics. Reaganomics was a term coined by radio broadcaster Paul Harvey to describe Reagan's plans to stimulate the economy through widespread tax cuts, decreased domestic spending, increased defense spending, and higher interest rates to better control monetary growth. Inflation dropped significantly in the 80s, from over 13% when he took office to around 5% at the end of his term. Unemployment also dropped, and by the time Reagan left office, more Americans were employed than ever before. During his presidency, over 20 million new jobs have been created, perhaps showing that his belief in trickle-down economics, freeing money for a corporation to invest and expand, will reach the workers and consumers at work. There were downsides, however, to Reaganomics, namely, the national debt soared to over $2 trillion by the time he left, and the United States went from being a creditor nation to the largest debtor nation in the world. Excuse me. The prosperity of the 80s would continue for two more presidents and be the longest period of expansion since World War II. Finally, Mr. President was the oldest person to serve as president. He left office when he was 77 years old. And I believe he lived to 94. Let's see. Let's see. 96, I think it was. Let's see. In 2011, will be 100. So let's see. 7, yeah. So 7 years. 93, yeah, he's 93. 93 years old. Wow. George Herbert Walker Bush. Born June 12th, 1924, and passed away a couple of years ago now. He was born in Milton, Massachusetts. He was nicknamed Poppy. His father was Prescott Sheldon Bush. Mother was Dorothy Walker Bush. His wife was Barbara Pierce Bush, who also passed away after her husband. Married on January 6, 1945. Children: George Walker Bush, President 43. Robin, who passed away in 1953. She was only, what was that, 4 years old? Jeez. John Ellis, Jeb Bush, Neil Bush, Marvin Bush, and Dorothy Bush. He was Episcopalian. He attended Yale University and graduated in 1948. He was a businessman and a public official. During World War II, Mr. Bush enlisted on his 18th birthday in 1942 as a seaman, second class in the U.S. Navy. In June 1943, he was commissioned as an ensign and became the Navy's youngest pilot. He served in the Pacific, flying 58 bombing missions before returning home in December 1944. He was discharged in September 1945 as lieutenant junior grade. He served as a U.S. representative for, was it 4 years? Yeah. U.S. ambassador to the United Nations for 2 years. Chairman of the Republican National Committee for 6 months to a year. Chief U.S. liaison in China for 6 months to a year. Director of the CIA for 6 months to a year. And then vice president for 8 years. Vice president under Reagan. He only served one term, January 20, 1989 to January 20, 1993. He was a Republican. He was defeated in the 1992 election by Bill Clinton. His vice president was Dan Quayle. Election of 19. Oops. Ooh, typo there. The election of 1989. I think that was, yeah. Electoral vote for Bush was 426. Michael Dukakis, 111. Lloyd Benson, 1 electoral vote. In the popular vote, Mr. Bush got 47,946,422. Dukakis got 41,016,429. Well, that's a big gap. Big gap there. So you're looking at 6,936,000 votes. Missed. The cabinet under George Herbert, excuse me, cabinet under George Herbert Walker Bush included Secretary of State James A. Baker, followed by Lawrence Eagleburger, Secretary of the Treasury Nicholas F. Brady, Secretary of Defense Richard Cheney, Dick Cheney, who was also Vice President under Bush number 43. Attorney General Richard Thornburgh, followed by William Barr, Secretary of the Interior Manuel Lujan, Secretary of Agriculture Clayton Uter, followed by Edward Madigan, Secretary of Commerce Robert Motzbacher, followed by Barbara H. Franklin, Secretary of Labor Elizabeth Dole. When was she related to Bob Dole? I think she is. Followed by Lynn Martin. So two different ladies, I think. Secretary of Health and Human Services Louis Sullivan. Secretary of HUD Jack Kemp. Secretary of Transportation Samuel Skinner, followed by Andrew W. Card. Secretary of Energy James Watkins. Secretary of Education Laurel P. F. Cavazos, followed by Lamar Alexander. Secretary of Veterans Affairs, it's a new post, Edward Derwinski. Supreme Court appointments were George Herbert Walker Bush, David Souter, and Clarence Thomas. We all know about that. Clarence Thomas versus Anita Hill. State of the Union, population of U.S. in 1989, 248,718,301. National debt of 93. So by the time he left, 4 trillion, 411 billion, 488 million, 883,139. So it went up to 4 trillion. It was at 2 trillion 4 years ago, and now it's at 2 trillion under Reagan. And now it's 4 trillion under Bush number one. Crazy. President Bush made broccoli farmers upset when he announced he did not now, nor had he ever liked broccoli. Undoubtedly, some children told their parents they did not need to eat the vegetables if the president had publicly announced. Oh, that is funny. Millie, dog of the first family, published her own book. Millie's book is dictated to Barbara Bush, which described life in the White House. Both George and Barbara Bush are related to former President Franklin Pierce. Berlin Wall falls. East German citizens began gaining access to the West in the summer of 1989 when Hungary and later Czechoslovakia opened their borders and allowed them to pass through. Once the new East German government announced they would open the border at midnight on November 9, 1989, thousands enthusiastically swarmed the 28-mile-long Berlin Wall. Many climbed on top and began chipping away at the symbol, erected nearly 40 years before, that has long separated one people. Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. The ADA prohibited discrimination against Americans who have physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. Businesses and those providing public accommodation as well as public transportation were required to make their facilities accessible to wheelchairs, like the OC bus. Employers were also prohibited from discriminating against anyone because of a person's disability. START, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. START I was signed by the Soviet Union and the U.S. on July 31st, 1991. But within 2 months, the USSR dissolved, leaving nuclear warheads in 4 of its republics: Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. The Lisbon Protocol was signed among those 4 nations in the United States in May 1992, reiterating the terms of the START I treaty. Among the terms, limits of 1,600 ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, per side, and no more than 6,000 accountable nuclear warheads to be extant 7 years after the treaty went into effect. Read my lips, no new taxes. The main phrase associated with President George Herbert Walker Bush and uttered during his appearance before the Republican Convention in 1988. A growing deficit and a shaky economy with a slumping stock market made him commit to raising taxes for the 1991 budget. Feeling betrayed by the president, many voters then turned to a third-party candidate, Ross Perot, in 1992, which helped cause Bush's defeat at the polls. World Wide Web. Personal computers had appeared in the early mid-1980s, but the internet was just beginning to gain in popularity. In 1990, the World Wide Web was created by Tim Berners-Lee. 2 years later, Gene A. Pauley coined the term surfing the internet. By the end of 1993, web use had grown by over 341,000%, and it was only the beginning. William Jefferson Clinton, born August 19, 1946, in Hope, Arkansas. He was nicknamed Bill, or Comeback Kid, and Slick Willie. He was a Baptist. He attended Georgetown University in 1968, Oxford University 68 to 70, Yale Law School in 73. He was a professor and a lawyer. No military service. His father was his biological father was William Jefferson Blythe III. Stepfather was Roger Clinton, who died in 1967. His mother was Virginia Cassidy Blythe Clinton Dwyer Kelly, passed away in 94. His wife was Hillary Rodham Clinton, we know her. And they were wed in October 11th. Oh, anniversary just passed 4 days ago. 75. So that would be was that 49 years? 75, 50, 48 years. 48 years. Their only child was Chelsea Victoria Clinton, whatever her married name is now. For political life, Mr. Clinton was Attorney General of Arkansas for 2 years, Governor of Arkansas from 79 to 81, and then again in 1983 to 1992. Served 2 terms, January 20, 1993 to January 20th, 2001. He was a Democrat. He completed his term. His vice president was Al Gore Jr. In 1992, the electoral vote was Clinton 370, George Herbert Walker Bush 168, Ross Perot 0. Popular vote Clinton 44,908,233. Mr. Bush 39,102,282. Ross Perot 19 million. It's quite a jump from 39 million to 19 million, so 20 million, 19 million votes lost. Yeah, 19 million. Wow, that's a lot. 19 million between Bush and Perot. 19,741,048 for Perot. In the election of 1996, Mr. Clinton got 379 electoral votes. Bob Dole 159. Ross Perot 0 again. In the popular vote, Mr. Clinton got 47,402,357. Mr. Dole got 39,198,000. Excuse me, 198,755. Ross Perot 8 million. Ooh, he had half the popular vote from 92, and now half of the popular vote. He went from 19 million. Ross Perot went from 19 million, 19.7 million, 92, 96, 8 million. Big jump, folks. Big jump. 8 million. Actually, that's a little over half. I mean, over half. 8,085,402. The cabinet of William Jefferson Clinton, Secretary of State Warren Christopher, followed by Madeleine Corbell Albright. Secretary of Treasury Lloyd Benson, Robert Rubin, Lawrence H. Summers, all served as Secretary of Treasury. Secretary of Defense Les Aspin Jr., followed by William J. Perry, followed by William S. Bill Cohen. Attorney General was Janet Reno. We've heard of her. I think she passed away now. Secretary of the Interior Bruce Babbitt. Secretary of Agriculture Mike Espy, followed by Dan Glickman. Secretary of Commerce Ronald H. Brown, followed by Mickey Cantor, that's Cantor with a K, and William Daley. Secretary of Labor Robert B. Reich, followed by Alexis Herman. Secretary of Health and Human Services Donna Shalala. Secretary of Housing HUD Henry G. Cisneros, followed by Andrew Cuomo, later governor of New York. Secretary of Treasury Federico R. Pena, followed by Rodney Slater. Secretary of Energy Hazel R. O'Leary, followed by Federico F. Pena, followed by Bill Richardson. Secretary of Education Richard W. Riley. Secretary of Veterans Affairs Jesse Brown, and Togo D. West Jr. As a delegate of Boys Nation, Clinton visited the White House and met President Kennedy in '63. Supreme Court appointments Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer. Stephen Breyer was recently replaced by Ketanji Brown Jackson. And RBG was replaced by Amy Coney Barrett. Notorious RBG. The U.S. population of 1993, 281,421,906. The national debt of 2000, 5 trillion, 674 billion, 178 million, 209,886.86. The president's salary was, I think it's been increased now, $200,000 a year. Mr. Clinton is the first president to have been a Rhodes Scholar. Mr. Clinton plays the saxophone and sometimes played it on television and at campaign events. Brady Handgun Violence Prevention. Signed into law by President Bill Clinton on November 30th, 1993, enacted on February 28, 1994. The Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act had been debated in Congress for 6 years before being passed. Named for President Reagan's press secretary, James Brady, who was shot during the assassination attempt on the president's life in 1981, the bill's main purpose was to establish a 5-day waiting period to allow a background check to be done before a citizen could purchase a gun. Smart. This was changed in 1998 when the FBI run NICS, National Instant Criminal Background System, went online and expedited background checks. NICS. Independent counsel. In the aftermath of Watergate, Congress attempted to prevent any future abuse of power. So, in 1978, it created the post of independent counsel, originally named special prosecutor, which would function separately from the Attorney General, but could be dismissed by that cabinet member. Over the years, multiple independent counsels have been ordered to investigate members of the executive branch, but none has received more publicity than Kenneth Starr. He investigated allegations about President Clinton's business dealings, the suicide events of Foster, Deputy White House Counsel, and the Monica Lewinsky affair, which led to the Starr report and the filing of impeachment charges by the U.S. House of Representatives. NAFTA, which Trump got us out of. NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was originally created by George Herbert Walker Bush, Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, and Mexican President Carlos Salinas de Gortari in 1992. President Clinton continued his predecessor's work and pushed it through Congress, signing NAFTA in 1993. It went into effect July 1st, 1994. Although critics voiced concern from all three countries that it would ruin them economically, this was not proven true. Trade and employment have increased, but disagreements still occur among the three nations regarding agricultural exports. After 9/11, concerns have also greatly increased about the open border policy between the United States and its neighbors. And we have a problem with that now under Joe Biden. Did we know Clinton made a record number of foreign trips as president? 133. Record. Did we know Clinton was the first Democratic president to win re-election? Since FDR. George Walker Bush, number 43. Born July 6, 1946 in New Haven, Connecticut. He was nicknamed W or Shrub. He was a Methodist. Attended Yale University, 1968. Harvard MBA, 1975. He was a businessman. He enlisted as an airman in Texas National Guard in 68, became a pilot, then commissioned a second lieutenant, discharged in 70. We know his family: George Herbert Walker Bush, Barbara Bush. His wife was Laura Welch Bush. 2 twin daughters, Barbara Pierce and Jenna Welch. Governor of Texas, 2 terms, January 2001 to January 2009. Republican. He completed his office. He completed his terms. Vice President Richard Cheney. Electoral vote election. This is the Bush-Gore court case. Electoral vote Bush 271, Albert Gore Jr. 266. Abstention 1. In the popular vote, Bush got 50,460,110. Gore got 51. That's the first time that contender got more than the nominee. 51,003,926. Ralph Nader, 2 million. Okay. Gore and Bush got 50 million. Ralph Nader, 2,883,105. And Pat Buchanan, not even 500,000. 449,225. Election of 2004. Bush, 286 electoral votes. John Kerry, we remember him, 252. Pretty close. Ralph Nader, 0. Bush, in the popular vote, Bush, 62,040,610. John Kerry, 59,028,111. Ralph Nader, 463,653. Cabinet of Mr. Bush: Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State. Secretary of Treasury: Paul O'Neill, John W. Snow, followed by Henry M. Paulson Jr. Secretary of Defense: Donald Rumsfeld and Robert Gates. Attorney General John Ashcroft, we remember him. Alberto Gonzalez and Michael B. Mukasey. Secretary of the Interior: Gail Norton, followed by Dick Kempthorne. Secretary of Agriculture: Ann M. Venman, followed by Mike Johans, followed by Edward T. Schaefer. Secretary of Commerce: Don Evans, followed by Carlos W. Gutierrez. Secretary of Labor: Elaine Chao. Secretary of Health and Human Services: Tommy P. Thompson and Michael O. Leavitt. Secretary of HUD: Marquardt Martinez and Alfonso Jackson, followed by Steve Preston. Secretary of Transportation: Norman Y. Mineta, followed by Mary E. Peters. Secretary of Energy: Spencer Abraham, Samuel W. Baldwin. Secretary of Education: Rod Page, followed by Margaret Spellings. Secretary of VA: Anthony Principi and R. James Nicholson. R. James Nicholson, followed by James Peake. Secretary of Homeland Security, first to the post is Tom Ridge, followed by Michael Chertoff. Supreme Court appointments, John Roberts, Chief Justice, to replace William Rehnquist, and Samuel Alito. State of the Union, 281,421,906. National debt of 2006, 8 trillion, 506 billion, 973 million, $899,215.23. President's salary was increased to $400,000 a year. George and Jeb Bush became the first brothers since the 60s to win governorships of 2 states on the same day. Earlier, the Rockefellers had won, Nelson in New York and Winthrop in Arkansas. Bush and his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, are the second father-son team to serve in the presidency. John Adams and John Quincy Adams was first. Presidential elections, when the popular vote winner lost the electoral vote in the election. 1824. No one emerged from the electoral vote from a majority, although Andrew Jackson won the popular vote. The House of Reps, however, declared John Quincy Adams the winner. That's in 1824. In 1876, a product of Reconstruction era politics, 3 states turned in 2 sets of electoral results, one each for Samuel J. Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes. With disputed results, no one was the clear winner. Congress decided Hayes was the winner by a vote of the specially created committee. In 1888, Benjamin Harrison won the electoral vote of the presidency, but Grover Cleveland won the popular vote. In 2000, neither candidate, Bush or Gore, had the majority of the Electoral College. Certain ballots in Florida became the focus of a legal dispute, and after a U.S. Supreme Court decision, recounts were halted, and Florida's electoral votes went to George Walker Bush, as did the presidency. Hopefully that kind of stuff that doesn't happen again. Did we know George W. Bush was part owner of the Texas Rangers baseball team? I think I read that. George W. Bush is the only president to have graduated from Harvard with an MBA. A section about 9/11. Events of September 11, 2001. I'm going to show this to you. I'm not going to read all of it. Show this to you guys. You guys can read that for yourselves, or you can look it up as well. Laura Bush, former school librarian, has long been an advocate of reading and started the Texas Book Festival when her husband was governor. As First Lady, she established a national book festival and held annually at the Library of Congress. All right. Final entry in this book is Barack H. Obama. Barack Hussein Obama was born August 4th, 1961 in Honolulu, Hawaii. He was nicknamed Barry. He is a Christian, although that is disputed. He graduated from Occidental College and Columbia University in 1983 and Harvard Law School in 1991. He was a lawyer and a community organizer. No military service. His father was Barack Obama Sr. Stepfather was Lolo Sotoro. Mother was Ann Dunham. His wife is Michelle Robinson Obama, wed in 1992 in Chicago, Illinois. Children are Malia Ann and Natasha Obama. Mr. Obama served as state senator of Illinois from 1997 to 2004, and then U.S. senator from 2005 to 2008. He was president from January 20, 2009 to January 20th, 2017. He was a Democrat. His vice president and now current president of the United States was Joseph R. Biden. In the election of 2008, for the electoral vote, Mr. Obama got 365. The late John McCain got 173. In the popular vote, Mr. Obama got 69,456,897. Mr. McCain got 59,934,786. In the election of 2012, Mr. Obama got 332 electoral votes. Mr. Mitt Romney got 206. In the popular vote, Mr. Obama got 65,398,038. Mr. Romney got 60,732,794. The cabinet of Mr. Obama was Hillary Rodham Clinton, Secretary of Treasury Timothy Geithner, Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, followed by Leon Panetta. Attorney General was Eric Holder. Secretary of Interior Kenneth Salazar. Secretary of Agriculture Thomas J. Vilsack. Secretary of Commerce Gary F. Locke, followed by John E. Bryson, followed by Rebecca M. Blank, B-L-A-N-K. Secretary of Labor Hilda L. Solis. Secretary of Health and Human Services Kathleen Sebelius. Secretary of Housing, Secretary of HUD Sean L. S. Donovan. Secretary of Transportation Raymond A. L. LaHood. Secretary of Energy Stephen Chu. Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan. Secretary of Veterans Affairs Eric K. Shinseki. They also had Rahm Emanuel too, later on. I think during his second term, he had Rahm Emanuel. Mr. Obama may have a dog now, but as a child in Indonesia, his pet was a monkey named Tata. Supreme Court appointments were Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. U.S. population was 313,847,465. National debt by the time he left in 2012. National debt, 16 trillion, 203 billion, 845 million, 445,638.71. President's salary was still $400K a year. During World War II, Madeline Dunham, Obama's grandmother, worked at the Boeing plant in Wichita, Kansas. Obama's left-handed, we all know that. Other left-handed presidents included James Garfield, Herbert Hoover, Harry S. Truman, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton. Secret Service gave Obama the code name Renegade. Interesting. Obama was a lecturer of constitutional law at the University of Chicago from 1993 until his election to the U.S. Senate in 2004. So about almost 9 years. Republican Senator John McCain co-sponsored the Secure America and Orderly Immigration Act with Obama in 2005. Nobel Peace Prize winning presidents. 1866, Swedish scientist Alfred Nobel invented dynamite and also developed over 350 patents in a variety of areas, including rubber and synthetic silk, although Nobel's most famous invention revolutionized weapons of the late 19th century. He desired for his legacy to be one of peace. To that end, Nobel provided in his will for those who helped humanity in the area of physics, chemistry, literature, medicine, and peace to be honored with the Nobel Peace Prize. The first was granted in 1901. Among those receiving this prize has been the following American presidents: Theodore Roosevelt, 1906; Woodrow Wilson, 1919; Jimmy Carter, 2002; Barack Obama in 2009 for his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. One former vice president has also won the award, Al Gore Jr., in 2007 for efforts to build up and disseminate greater knowledge about man-made climate change. Oh, gosh. The Citizens United decision. One of the most contentious issues to arise during Obama's first term, over which he had little or no control, was the case of Citizens United versus the FEC, Federal Election Commission. FEC, not FCC, or FTA, or FTC, Federal Trade Commission now. This is the FEC. A conservative nonprofit organization, Citizens United, had run afoul of campaign guidelines when it tried to distribute a documentary titled Hillary the Movie via video on demand using corporate money instead of funds from its related political action committee, the PAC. Their challenge to the FEC's ruling made it to the Supreme Court. The court's dramatic 5-4 January 2010 decision decisively changed the nation's campaign financing landscape, stating in effect that political spending, not direct contributions to candidates, which was still limited. The effect of political spending by groups like corporations and labor unions was protected as free speech and, in essence, unlimited. Obama, a former lecturer of constitutional law at the University of Chicago, was unvarnished in his criticism during the State of the Union speech later in the month, saying, I don't think American elections should be bankrolled by Americans' most powerful interests. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, who voted with a majority, was visibly uncomfortable during that part of Obama's speech and was seen shaking his head in disagreement. There's an article about the hunt for Osama bin Laden. And that is the end of this book with all the great highlights. So I hope you enjoyed the series of the American President. You can read about Trump and Mr. Biden on the internet, Wikipedia. This will only be for just this book. So I hope you enjoyed these videos and have a great night. Bye-bye.